why haven't they checked in on me? Thinking about myself, thinking about my life and my story. Started feeling sorry for myself for a minute, guys. This is a bit honest.
I need somebody that's kind of look at me and be like, man, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. It may be bad. And I do remember as a church, there were moments where, everybody, it just felt like the whole thing was spiraling out and people really going through it.
Hello and welcome to Discussion Questions with Every Nation NYC. My name is Ailsa and I am your host today. Remember, if you have not yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps you catch up on videos, but also helps other people find us. So it's really helpful. Today on Discussion Questions, we are talking about some questions based off of a message by Pastor Shino. We're also going to get into some more of the nitty gritty about what it looks like to follow Jesus. And today I am joined by Pastor Shino. Yay. Hey, Pastor Shino.
How you doing?
And Pastor Nathan, which I find hard to say. So we are going to talk about a passage in the Bible in Genesis 16. If you would like to read it and follow along with us, you can also listen to Pastor Shino's message. You'll find it in the show notes. But we're looking at this story with Hagar, which, guys, full disclosure, is one of my favorite stories in Genesis.
All right.
So here we go. We're going to get passionate. The first question today that we're going to look at is, Hagar says in the passage, "You are the God who sees me." Why do you guys think it's important to be seen? And why is it significant that God sees Hagar? Pastor Shino, what do you think?
I look at it like this, is that, first of all, it's a sign of being significant. Sometimes you can feel like nobody sees you. You can be doing the little things behind the scenes, but it makes you feel important when somebody sees you, sees what you're doing, and or sees something maybe that notices something that you're going through. So it just makes you feel important.
Yeah, you're actually really good at that, Pastor Shino. You see people doing stuff, and it just makes people be recognized and known. Nathan, what do you think?
So true. What you're saying, Shino. I'm thinking about my desire to be seen, and even our culture's desire to be seen. There's this sense these days that unless people see, what I've done, then it didn't even really happen. I mean, we have to post every meal, we have to share everything that we've eaten, every party that we've gone to, and we want. It's like our life is not really for ourselves. Our life is playing out for an audience. And I think how much more for Hagar was feeling that when there was nobody that she could go to offer this complaint up, in this moment of real abuse kind of thing going on. Sarah, the lady of the house, she's not going to help her. She's the source of it. Abraham's on her side. And then her third option is the wilderness. There's no social media. There's no court of appeals. There's no, magistrate to go and appeal to. It's these awful people or the wilderness. And, but in the midst of that, God is seen. And I think we want to be seen. Yeah. And I think our life is normally playing out for some sort of audience. Yeah. And what God is saying is that I'm watching.
Yes.
You don't need that other audience. I'm your audience if you'll just be okay with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've actually created a whole life and a whole culture based on creating audiences for ourselves. If we're not feeling significant, it's a way to make your own audience. You can create your own significance.
I know in this season of COVID, there was a minute where none of my family were in New York, and I was like, why haven't they checked on me? Why haven't they checked in on me? Thinking about myself, thinking about my life and my story. Started feeling sorry for myself for a minute, guys. This is a bit honest. Family, I love you, and it's okay. But
you go over it.
I was looking for that audience. I was looking for somebody to pay attention to me, and God eventually kind of got me out of that self-pity thing.
Yeah, I think we were going through a moment in New York, and it was this would be a better moment if someone would see us go through it. They would know our pain and know what we're going through. Somehow it lessens the pain. But in the end, you realize that God did see you and that it was all okay, right?
Yeah.
And they were also going through stuff.
Yes, it was bigger than me.
Yeah, it's bigger than us. It talks about In that passage, God asks Hagar, where have you come from and where are you going? And in Hagar's pain, she's only able to talk about where she's come from, it seems like. And it's actually the angel of the Lord that has to tell her where she's going and gives her promises. So it kind of touching on that, like, why do you think it's difficult to see past our own pain? And what are some ways that can help us change our perspective? Nathan, what do you think?
There is just a blinding nature to pain. It consumes our every waking moment. It consumes all of our thoughts. And the only thing that our mind is able to scream oftentimes in the middle of pain, whether it's heartache or physical pain, is get me out. Just like make it stop. Yeah. I remember like early on having a baby, and when that baby's crying, the only thing your brain says is make it stop. It's not the most generous thought. Like, oh, this poor child probably is, experiencing like some hardship here in their first couple of months of life. It's just like your brain's just like, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. And you're sleepless and whatever else. And I think that's often like with heartache or with frustrations in work or whatever situation we're going through. Often it's just like, just make it stop. And I think that's where Hagar found herself, just running away. And just no plan, right into the wilderness. She's pregnant. I don't think she brought any water with her.
I don't know. She's always running out of water.
She literally chose, I'd rather die than live in this pain. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of people that are in that really desperate place right now. Yeah. And our heart goes out to them in the midst of that pain.
Right. I think when you're in survival mode, it's really hard to see past that. And you can see that in Hagar's story.
That's right.
She can't see past the future.
In our men's meeting, we learned about like these deep recesses of our brain, right, Pastor Shino, and how in the midst of stress, that deep part of our brain is triggered, and it's the fight, flight, or freeze, and all we've got are those reactions, those core base functions. I mean, we encounter this even like if you're trying to find your keys. Keep tracking the same three places because you're not thinking creatively. You're thinking in your most basic, stressed out brain, and not thinking about all of the resources that you have available to you. Yeah. So pain triggers that, and it's physiological as well as spiritual.
True.
And God slows her down in that moment, gets her out of that.
Yeah. We will also put that video in the show notes if anyone wants to find out about your brain when it's
Dr. Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, he does a better job at explaining that than me.
Yeah. You can go check if Nathan is correct. Yeah. Pastor Shino, what do you think? Why do you think it's difficult to get past your pain?
Sometimes I think it's paralyzing, and then you can't see past it, just like Pastor Nathan said, but also it's a level of hopelessness.
Yeah.
You think it can't get better. I think of athletes, that tear their knees up or their shoulders or something, and they get a diagnosis from the doctor, and it's that doom and gloom, and immediately in your mind you're thinking, can I get better? And so when you're all you can think about is the pain, but you never think about, man, am I going to be able to get better? And then on top of that is how is this going to get better? Who can rescue and who can help? And I think about her, who knows what kind of abuse she was taking. It just said it was intense between her and Sarai. And sometimes words and things that we deal with, we don't know if it was physical or what, but sometimes those things mark us, and it's hard to get past it. And so, for her, I can only imagine if it was that bad to drive yourself out into the wilderness somewhere where, like Pastor Nathan was saying, I would rather die than go back and deal with that. It had to be something significant. And so, I just always think about just hope and thinking that things could get better.
What do you think are some ways that we can change our perspective on that? If we find ourselves in that, we're just in that survival mode, we've got hopelessness, what are some ways that we can change our perspective on that?
Sometimes, we talk about connect groups.
We love a connect group.
And I know everybody's like, connect group, I don't need one. But it's amazing that when you're in a connect group and you begin to hear other people's struggles and other people's battles, sometimes it dwarfs yours. It makes you feel like, man, I don't have it as bad as I thought, And so I think, being able to be in a safe environment, to talk about it, create pockets where you can vent and share those deep hurts, those deep pains. But the other thing is, one thing I've learned along the way is I go find someone worse off and I try to help. I try to go help somebody that's got it worse than I got. And for some reason, when I do that, it takes the focus off of me and it focuses on them. And next thing I know, I look up and my stuff is gone. It's like, man, it doesn't hurt anymore. The thought's not there. So I think also going and helping other people kind of can alleviate some of that too.
I am pretty sure, though I cannot quote this anywhere, that there are like studies that they've done that choosing to serve others or be kind first actually does more for your own well-being, your own mental health. But I can't quote it anywhere. But I'm sure it exists. Pretty sure it exists.
You're so right.
I know, I'm so right. Nobody can disagree because I haven't quoted it. Nathan, what do you think? What is it that you think one of the ways that can change our perspective when we're stuck in that?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind, Shino is so good. Like he talks about serving others.
What are you going to say?
Eating candy.
Yeah, have some cake.
Yeah, eat cake. But then after you eat cake and candy, what genuinely came to mind was praise.
Yes.
Is to praise in the pain. And it's always good to remember that as bad as this is, that God has a plan for me. I remember getting rejection letters in college and or when I was applying to colleges, and getting those rejection letters back was so crushing. But in that moment, choosing to praise my way through and to say, all right, God, I don't see the future of my life. I don't know what's going to happen next because I put all my eggs in like one basket. But choosing to praise in the midst of that pain. So and that in my high school days has marked me. That has become like a gut reaction. Every time I'm experiencing pain, I say, it doesn't have to, the story's not told out. The story's not told out. I'm going to praise my way through this. And I mean, it goes into my parents' divorce, from that moment, into my parents' divorce, into my brother's death, into moments of darkness around my children and different things like that. And then COVID in 2020, I'm going to praise my way through because I know that even if I can't see where I'm going, there's a God who sees. And so, it's not quite as selfless as Shino,
No.
It works too.
No.
God's good.
Yeah, I'm totally going to paraphrase, I think, Eugene Peterson, like really badly, but I think he says we live in like a sensation culture where we are driven by what our emotions tell us first. But a lot of the time when we choose to worship, then the motivation and the emotions catch up with it. We choose to praise, then it catches up. Whereas a lot of the time I think we're waiting for the emotion that like feels good or the motivation and then we praise, but actually, because that's what our culture tells us to do. Like your emotion is real and like you only do stuff based off of it.
And then you pair that with like seeking an audience. And so when we just spew our guts out on social media and then we find others that are also experiencing the same calamity that we're in, instead of getting caught in anything that's going to lift us, we just eat the gloom. And we can eat the gloom for weeks at a time if we choose to only focus there. And so we get locked into a confirmation bias pattern through the algorithms. Yeah, and it's deeply unhelpful. So I love that idea from Eugene Peterson.
Pretty sure it was him.
Thanks.
Also, nobody can check that. Like I think. We see that Hagar, she gets those promises of the future because she encounters God. And like making those moves to try and encounter God even when we don't feel like it is like really important. Whether that's choosing to praise even when we're not motivated to do it, choosing to like be in community with other people that can help us. And I love that. That's like so practical and so good. I also love that like for some reason in the Bible, you only find out you were pregnant when like the angel of the Lord turned up. It's very cool. Side point.
I just want to go back to something Pastor Nathan was saying about like getting around like just the praise. Yeah. It's important for us to get around the right people. We're talking about because, he was talking about, the doom and gloom. I need somebody that's kind of like look at me and be like, man, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. It may be bad. And I do remember as a church, there were moments where everybody, it just felt like the whole thing was spiraling out and people really going through it. But it just took one, somebody to be like, man, it ain't, I'm not staying like this. And then it just brought hope and lift in the room. And so, we got to be careful who we're around, because you got to find somebody that will call you up and then call you out in a good way to keep you moving forward, so you don't get stuck in that situation.
I love that. Like, check your relationships. You're always going to have people that you're serving, that you're helping, but like, you've got to make sure you've got some people that like lift you up too, or you're just going to get dragged down.
Yeah.
That's why I like being with Shino.
I know. That's why we all like being
And you.
friends with Shino. And me. Thanks.
Come on.
I am happy to come second to Shino. I'm not actually, but that's
If anybody's watching this, they haven't figured it out yet.
we're actually married, just in case. Okay, so Hagar, and then this is the hard bit in this story, is that God asked, the angel of the Lord asked Hagar to go back to the place that was abusive, to the woman that was like losing it at her. When has God sent you back into a place of pain? Maybe not in the same, quite a stark way. What was it like, and how did God use that, Pastor Shino?
For me, I went through a separation, divorce, and then I had to go back to the city where it all kind of went down. And so I moved here to New Jersey, New York area, and started rebuilding. But I had to go back to get, to say the goodbyes and, to get the healing and the things that I needed. And it was hard, because you left one way and you had to go back into an environment where it was going to be a lot of questions, what happened, this, that, and the other, and just having to, come to the reality that the past is the past, but, I'm building to my future. But it was almost a moment of healing for me, to be able to just to say, you're still my friends. These people this is still my city. I still care about this area that I had to leave abruptly. And it was a good moment for me, but I'm not gonna say it was hard, and it was something I was like, yeah, I can't wait. It was not
so fun.
It was just, because also going back into an environment like that, the enemy can paint pictures. This is how it's going to happen. This is what people are saying. The whispers and all those things, and so but going back to a place of pain also can bring healing and the reconciliation that you need as well.
Yeah. I love that. And I suppose like Hagar does do that in that it says like go back and submit to Sarai. Like that's really hard, but she ends up going back into the wilderness and raising her son there. But her son gets to be Abraham's son because she goes back. That's like right. I think she probably ends up leaving with more because of that, or at least he has like a blessing that's different. Nathan, what about you?
God gives her a blessing and a calling, and that son is able to grow up to maturity because she goes back.
Yeah.
What I've found in walking with God is that anytime that He wants to bring healing in my life, there's always a return to that pain. That when we're hurt, that often our survival instincts kick in, that fight or flight, and we choose something in that moment that is good for our survival but not good for our long-term health.
Yeah.
And that through that choice, we adopt character assessments of ourselves or identity statements about God that are just not true. That in that moment of pain, the enemy is able to lie to us because we fought our way out, or we lied our way out, and we say, well, you see, it's all about me and about how I react in these painful or hard situations. It's something that I struggled with growing up was not being able to read very well in public, and it caused a lot of kind of defensiveness in me. And I would say over and over, well, I just can't read. And that'd be like my kind of get out of doing work kind of card through middle school and high school. And that confession became a confession of my life. And God has had to take me back to memories of standing in front of classrooms and getting laughed at, and arguments and fights with my parents and teachers, all sorts of things, and unpick the pain in my soul. And God keeps taking me back there, and it's grown me in my freedom around my academics, around my reading, around my studies, around getting in God's word. Even there was so many lies around getting in God's word because I can't read or I don't read. That confession, which was a lie of the enemy and a survival tactic that I employed in my high school years, that no longer is valid because God has delivered me from that. I've learned how to read. I know how to read even in public now.
Yay.
And yeah, it only took me till I was about 18, but
And you're a good preacher too.
I can sometimes preach.
But God
has
had
to
that
take me back.
confession.
He
And
has
you
to
had that
take me-
confession for a lot longer
That's true.
than it was true.
Yeah. And so God had to take me back to those memories. And it was a lot of tears and a lot of unpicking and forgiving people and repenting of my sin, like the sin of confessing idiocy over my life. You know, so God takes us back to those pain places.
Yeah. I think that is an important point in that sometimes we have to get out of somewhere that you're to just survive. There's like I have to get out of this, whether that be an abusive relationship or some sort of situation where you are just having to survive. But at some point it's like to move past that, to have those closure moments, to have that this is not going to define me. We often have to revisit that. We can see that in Hagar where she gets to have that blessing on her son because she goes back. So as a final question, we talked about God seeing Hagar and about her being in her pain. What are some ways that we can help other people be seen and cared for in our community? Pastor Shino.
You know, to help people be seen is acknowledge the work that they're doing, you know, and you know, to celebrate them, you know, to celebrate when somebody does something well, and or to give people an opportunity to do something that they want to do, create moments, create environments where people can be seen. You know, I know Pastor Nathan is really good at empowering. You know, I see that a lot. You know, we're talking about in our church, not just being a disciple, but making disciples.
Yeah.
And one of the, you know, the things about being making one is that you have to be able to empower people to go do what God's called them to do and be. And so many times, you know,
Thanks, Pastor Stan. I'm feeling really seen.
No.
I know. He's like
I see
throwing
it.
compliments at you the whole time.
I love it, man.
You know, and you know, putting people in a position, giving them an opportunity to fulfill their dream, to fulfill their calling. And so that's one of the ways, is just being intentional and also pausing and stopping and then calling the greatness out of people. Because people may feel like you were saying, you know, like, I grew up a certain way where I wasn't confident, or, you know, something had been spoken over me that just kind of makes me feel less than. But in this moments where you have to see that person and say, I don't know what you see. Like we're talking about God sees her. I don't know what you see, but this is what God is showing me about you. And then call that greatness out of them, and then give them the ability to do what God's called them to do.
Yeah, I love that. Nathan?
It's about considering others, you know, more important than we consider ourselves. And I think Pastor Shino's hit on it so many times through the course of this conversation. Just go help somebody.
Yeah.
A practice that I've started doing when I get the time and I'm like, man, I've got an hour and I don't know what to do with this hour. I'll pray and ask God, just like, God, bring people to mind. And I'll send them a text or send them a voice note. Just pray for them. Just speak the word and life of God over them. Go and encourage somebody. Care about somebody other than yourself. You know, when that pity gets in us, it's a good indication it's time to go be a blessing to somebody.
Yeah.
And so that's what I got. It's I think that we can partner with God in seeing people.
I love that. And love the calling that we would do that as a whole community. I think sometimes it's easy for it to be seen as like a thing that you as pastors should do. And I think
that's so true. This is not a pastor responsibility.
No.
I mean, it's
Like,
part of my responsibility, but it's also just like, let's be a body, right?
Right. And the more that we are a community and a body that sees one another and sees each other's pain or celebrates with each other and takes a moment to do that. And more important as we don't actually always get to physically see each other. So yeah. And so that just brings me to thank you to the people in our community that are doing that. There are men and women in our community that are seeing people and calling them out and caring for them. Yeah. And
thank you to our Connect group leaders.
Yes.
Guys, heroes in the community. They're just
Right.
standing with people, praying for people, on the ground, fighting battles for each other.
So true.
It's true.
Heroes.
Yay. That's like a nice note to stop it there. I feel encouraged. I feel seen. That's good.
Thank you, Ailsa.
You're welcome. Guys, thank you for joining us today as we talk about this story in the Bible and talk about what it means in our actual lives as we follow Jesus. If you have not yet, please subscribe. We love it. It really helps other people find us and you be able to find future videos. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you again soon. See you later. Bye.